Join us on the show right now. Very pleased to have with us professor at George Mason University School of Law. Joyce Lee Malcolm is with us. And Professor Malcolm, thank you so much for coming on the program tonight.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure. You had a piece in the Wall Street Journal, the soft-on-crime roots of British disorder, talking about the recent riots. And you say that this is not, in the long storied history of that island nation, this is actually a fairly recent development.
Well, it's recent in the sense that it started in the 1950s, so I suppose in the long story history it's recent. But it has a history in the last century of increasing tolerance toward crime and letting people off early and not wanting to arrest and prosecute or imprison young offenders, anybody 18 and under. And at the same time being very harsh on your law-abiding citizen and not allowing them to protect themselves. So this awful combination of being kind of soft on the criminals and hard on the law-abiding has been building up, and it isn't really a surprise that it's burst into these terrible riots.
I mean, you lay out some staggering statistics. You say, for instance, that police have been instructed by the British Home Office to let burglars and first-time offenders who confess to any of some 60-odd crimes, ranging from assault and arson to sex with an underage girl, let them off with a caution. No jail time, no fine, no community service. Basically, just a finger wagging of don't do this again. 70% in 2009 of apprehended burglars avoided prison?
Yes. Prison is expensive. And there's this excuse that, well, it doesn't rehabilitate people. Of course, what it does do is keep them off the streets and punish them. But at any rate, there's this real reluctance to incarcerate anybody. The prisons are crowded. They don't want to build any more. And I remember a couple of years ago, the man who was the commissioner of prisons saying that unless the prisons could show a better rate of rehabilitation, he wasn't going to put anybody else in them.
Wow.
So, I mean, when you have this attitude that somehow the prisons are not doing the right job, you know, that people are not getting better for having been in prison, you know, and totally discounting the fact that, well, maybe keeping them off the streets is a help. You know, you get this kind of result where people are turned out, or they put these belts or around their ankles or whatever.
Oh, the monitoring bracelets.
Yes,
yeah,
right, monitoring
those work really
bracelets.
well.
Oh, they work terribly well. I mean, there was an incident recently where some woman had gotten into an altercation in a supermarket and with a man and threatened to call her boyfriend, which she did, and her boyfriend came and beat someone up who turned out to be the wrong man, but her boyfriend was out on bail with one of these bracelets on, you know, and it didn't keep him from beating someone else to a pulp.
Right.
So it means that a lot of people who have committed crimes are out on the street.
Yeah, and meantime, as you, the other side of the coin, the law-abiding have been slowly and systematically disarmed, and not just disarmed in terms of the firearms that they can own, but really in terms of the very act of self-defense is now, you know, a questionable activity in England.
Well, they believe that you should leave everything to the police. That the professionals should handle it, and that taking the law into your own hands, as they see it, is wrong. They actually refer to self-defense sometimes as vigilantism. You know, being a vigilante by protecting yourself. And so people really get punished if in a tussle with an attacker, they harm the attacker. Then they get the punishment that the attacker should have gotten.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, we even heard British Prime Minister David Cameron and a lot of the Metropolitan Police officials telling people, let us handle this. Don't go stand outside of your property. Don't protect your home. Don't protect your business. And clearly, while they were saying this, you know, businesses that had survived the Blitz were burning to the ground.
Now, there's some neighborhoods in London where shopkeepers and their families actually did guard their streets and stayed all night and chased away these thugs. But it's very difficult to do that when you're not allowed to have any weapons. I mean, I think Cameron is trying to be harsher on criminals and allow homeowners more scope for self-defense. And he's brought in the former commissioner of police from New York Bratton, who also went on to L.A.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure whether his policies of zero tolerance will work all that well, because if your sentences are very short, then even with zero tolerance, there's people are not going to be incarcerated. There are two young men who were just recently convicted of having, through Facebook, tried to organize riots during all of this. And they've been given 4-year jail sentences.
Right.
And this is considered outrageous, that they should have a 4-year jail sentence.
Well, I'll tell you, I'll tell you what I find outrageous about that is apparently the riots never occurred. Meanwhile, I've seen stories of people who actually were convicted of burglary getting 4-month sentences, getting 6-month sentences, and we just talked about a 13-year-old who walked away with basically 9 months caution or a 9-month referral after doing helping to do 20,000 pounds worth of damage to his shop.
Oh yeah, well that's because he's under 18.
Yeah.
So he will never be put in jail until he reaches 18. And in fact, one of the people that they who's recently been charged from all the riots was an 18-year-old who had 21 previous appearances before the court. And I thought 21 times and never went to jail. So for 21 times in and out of the courts and no serious punishment. So now they're threatening that this time, now that he's 18, he'll get some jail time. So I think that there's just, something serious has to change.
Yeah, I mean, if the 22nd time is the charm,
right.
that indicates there's a problem. Now, I want to ask you about something else, because there are a couple of competing petitions going around in England. One that is far more popular than others. I think over 100,000 Brits have signed on to this. It's a petition that says if you were convicted of taking part in any of these riots, you lose your benefits. If you have a council house, you get kicked out. If you're on the dole, you're off the dole. There is now, however, a competing petition. Do not remove the benefits of convicted London rioters. They say that it would be counterproductive to remove all benefits for those convicted of felony in the London riots. Petitioners accept that with the root cause of the riots being mainly financial in nature, making those involved even poorer will do nothing to help the current situation or prevent similar acts occurring again in the future. First of all, do you buy the argument that this was a poverty-based riots?
No, not at all. I mean, I think that the Labour Party sort of jumped on it immediately and claimed it was because of cuts, budget cuts, and that unemployment was high. But these people weren't people wanting 9-to-5 jobs. I mean, they organized some of these riots on their BlackBerries. And the things that they won for, they weren't robbing food stores. They were, going after computer equipment and things like that. Right. I mean, these were not the poor looking for bread.
Well, no. In fact, I mean, weren't we told that they were organizing the riots on their BlackBerries?
Yes. So, I mean, it's the sad thing between those two petitions is the notion on one side that, there should be some serious punishment, and on the other side, well, it's poverty, it's, unemployment. So it's society is at fault. It's society has got to do something, and we shouldn't, punish these people because they're victims of society. And that's the notion that has prevailed for all the years, I think, and has gotten them to this state where no one under 18 ever gets put in prison, and where criminals get short sentences or no sentence at all. Mm-hmm. Or community service. I wonder sometimes what it's like having these people do community service, what sort of community service they actually do,
Yeah. Stay off the streets, stay out of people's way.
That would be a service, actually.
So how do you turn a society like this around? I mean, it's amazing. Like, you said, since 1950, this is really... We've seen now, 3 generations cause all of this mayhem. Does it take 3 generations to turn it around? I
certainly hope not. I think that these riots have been a real wake-up call. I was listening to the debate in the special parliamentary session that Cameron called, and the politicians on both sides of the aisle, all the parties, were really angry and upset, and all just wrote it off as criminality. And while they were surprised, which surprised me that they were surprised at what had happened, but I think that maybe this will be the thing that changes, that brings about a change. I mean, the Tories have introduced or are about to introduce legislation that would allow homeowners to protect themselves and use any violence not grossly disproportionate, as they put it, when someone breaks into their homes. And when this was introduced, of course, the Guardian and the liberal press said this was barbaric, going back to the Middle Ages. But maybe now, that will pass. Maybe there will be more serious sentences for people who commit crimes. They're just going to have to pay more. They're going to have to put more people in prison if they deserve to be, and keep them there and not let them out because it's cheaper. And the trouble with having people on the street who just committed a crime and are doing so-called community service is that the people that they attacked are afraid to testify against them because they're going to be right back out there. So I'm hopeful that maybe these riots will be the trigger that changes things. That it would be really nice if that happened. It would be a positive result from it all.
Do you see, Professor Malcolm, a day in which the self-defense rights of British citizens, British subjects, are ever restored?
I think that they have to be restored, and that will have to be part of it. That the police have to allow people to protect themselves more. I mean, some of the incidents where they have brought charges against someone who's been attacked and who kills their attacker in the struggle, and police are preparing murder charges, the public has been so outraged that the police and the prosecutors have had to drop the charge. So the public is ready for a serious change.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I've gotten that feeling as well, that the government is really behind where the people are right now.
I think that's absolutely true. The people are outraged. It's sad that despite that, they haven't been able to get any change. And I think it's because in the past, both the major political parties were basically on the same wavelength as far as the criminological setup went.
Right.
But I think that now, at least the Tories are claiming that they are going to end what they call the caution culture. So, I mean, more power to them. I think that this really should help.
I hope so. But let me ask you one more question before we let you go. Can you do one? Let's say you end the caution culture, but you don't change anything in terms of the attitude that let the government handle everything. You aren't responsible for your own safety. It's not your job. If you only take half that step, are things really going to change?
They might get a little bit better, but they're never going to completely change until they let people protect themselves in a serious way. Mm-hmm. Because the government, as you know, can't be everywhere. The police can't be everywhere, and they're not obliged to be. And there's no one that can protect you in your hour of need except you. And if they don't allow people to have some kind of reasonable weapons to protect themselves or to use force, then it's just half the job done. It still isn't going to deter crime.
Well, Professor, I can't thank you enough for coming on the program tonight, talking about this. It was a really interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal, and I look forward to having you back on again very soon.
Oh, thank you very much.